Okay, so on this question, we're looking at, they're giving us a preference schedule, which is this thing right here, right? Remember what this means. This means that 11 people voted ACB, meaning they liked A best, followed by C, followed by B. I'm sure you remember these 4 people, they voted CAB, they liked C best, followed by A, followed by B. You knew all that. Okay, so they're saying find the Condorcet candidate. It's a French word. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, I don't care what you call it. What is that thing? What is a Condorcet candidate? Well, if you look on the notes, and I will, I'll be showing you those notes, but let me first write this out. A Condorcet candidate. Here's what it is. Write it out. Condorcet candidate. It is a person that wins all 1-to-1s. Now, what do I mean all 1-to-1? Like, like a tennis match or something like that, or you go one-on-one with somebody, right? So let me show you precisely what I mean. So first off, let me lay out all the possible one-on-ones. So how many candidates do we have here? Three, A, B, and C, right? So what are all the ways they can match up one-on-one? Well, you can have A versus B. Whoops, that wasn't a very good B. There we go, A versus B. Or you can have A versus C. Or you can have, so we got A with B, A with C, and then what's the third matchup? B with C, right, you got it. So those are all the possible ways they can match up 1-to-1, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of those and decide who would win that matchup. And by win, we mean who do the people prefer? If it was just to those 2 candidates, in reality, there's 3 candidates, but if it was just those 2, who would the people prefer? This is a way of figuring out the will of the people. So who would they prefer? Well, let's start here with the A versus B. If it was just A and B, let's pretend C had dropped out. That's the easiest way. I'm just going to cross out C. Now, really, C's in there, but when we're just saying A versus B, we're ignoring C for the moment, right? We're just saying, hey, if it was just A and B, suppose C had dropped out of the election or whatever, right? That happened years ago in some big presidential, I think Ross Perot dropped out. It can change everything. Anyway, same kind of thing. Let's say C drops out. It's just A versus B now. Who would the people prefer? What would the will of the people be? Well, these 11 people, they'd like A better, huh? So that's 11 for A. These 4 people, who would they like better? A also, that's another 4 there for A. And then these 12 people, who would they like better? B, that's 12 for B. So who would win in that matchup? It was just A. Who do they prefer in just A versus B? They prefer A, huh? Because A, you can tell that's an 11, right? A is 11 plus 4, 15. So that would be A. If it just comes down to A and B, the people would prefer A, wouldn't it? Okay, so that's a 1. Now let's go to the next one. How about if it was just A versus, you got to do all these, a little tedious. You got to go through each of these. So let's do A versus C now. So if it came down to just A versus C, so I'm doing this one now. I'm going to get rid of B, that means, for the moment. Let's suppose B had just dropped out of the election or whatever. And it was just A and C saying, hey, who do you people prefer just out of A and C? Well, how about these 11? Who would they prefer if it was just A and C? They like A, so that's 11 for A. How about these 4 people? If it was just A and C, they prefer C. And how about these 12? If it was just A and C, they'd actually want C. Now, B was the one they really wanted, but we're saying, suppose B dropped out, it was just A and C. If it comes down to just A and C, they're like, we prefer C. So that's another 12 for C. So who won that little battle? C did, right? If it's just down to A and C, people are like, well, we prefer C. Okay, now, last one, B versus C. These are 1-to-1 matchups, which is what Condorcet is all about. Some French guy this is basically another philosophy of how this French guy thought, well, this is how voting should be. If the people prefer a certain candidate 1-to-1, that should be the one that wins. That's kind of the thinking. Let's do the last one. B versus C. So if it was just down to B versus C, that means, let's suppose A had dropped out of the election. Who would the people prefer just out of those 2? Well, the 11 people, who would they prefer? C, because even though they really wanted A, we're supposing A dropped out, they said, okay, well, if it's just B and C, we'd like C better, huh? So those 11 people want C. How about these 4 people? C again. C's already got it, huh? I'll do the last one as a formality. These 12 people would like B, but C won, huh? 15 votes there to 12. So notice C won both his 1-to-1 matchups. He's the Condorcet candidate. That's what it means. The answer to this question is C. A Condorcet candidate, that French guy that came up with this thing, he basically said, look, if there's anybody that wins all their 1-to-1 matchup, that's the people's favorite. At least so he thinks, and we'll look if that's a good way. We'll talk more about that in days to come. But first off, that was Condorcet's philosophy, that if there's a candidate that all the people prefer in all the 1-to-1 matchups, if you just match them up 1-to-1, and this guy or gal or whoever always wins, well, then that's the crowd favorite. That was it sounds reasonable, doesn't it? But lots of critiques of it in days to come. But sure sounds good at first. And that's what Condorcet said. Look, C, when it comes down to A and C, the people like C. When it comes down to B and C, the people like C. So the people like C, don't they? They seem to like C better than anybody else. That's the Condorcet candidate. Now, sometimes a weird thing will happen. As you can tell, it says up there, if there is one. If there is not a Condorcet candidate, enter none. Now, can that happen? It actually can. Like, for example, what if B had won this? That didn't happen, but what if B had won that last matchup? Well, that would mean everybody won one of the matchups, but nobody won all their matchups. So there would be no Condorcet candidate. That can happen. In other words, you think, well, they like B better than C, yeah, so you think, oh, so it's B. But when B matched up with A, they liked A better. So no, B's not their favorite. So, everybody lost one, basically. So in that case, there's no clear crowd favorite. There's no clear Condorcet candidate is what they call it. That can happen where nobody actually wins all their matches. Everybody loses one somewhere along the way. And if that's the case, you enter none. But that was not the case here. In our situation, C won all his matches. So he's the Condorcet candidate. There we go.